consecutive numbers from the Fibonacci series. This is certainly not limited to the sunflower alone. The leaves of densely seeded plants, such as the cabbage, also form spirals running to right or left around a central point, as in the sunflower. Daisies and pinecone scales are also set out in right and left spirals. If you count these one by one, you will again obtain numbers based on the Fibonacci series, in other words, on the golden ratio. These numbers in the spirals in plants will be 5/8 and 8/13 in pine cones, 8/13 in pineapples, 21/34 in the central florets of the daisy, 21/34 in the central florets of the daisy, and 21/34, 34/55, and 55/89 in sunflowers. Evidence of God's flawless creation can be found in all this fine measure and regularity. The flawless creation of plants has been revealed in a verse from the Quran, and we are told that this is also important proof for believers. It is He who sends down water from the sky, from which we bring forth growth of every kind, and from that we bring forth the green shoots, and from them we bring forth close-packed seeds. And from the spathes of the date palm, date clusters hanging down, and gardens of grapes and olives and pomegranates, both similar and dissimilar. Look at their fruits as they bear fruit and ripen. There are signs in that for people who believe. Geometrical shapes are by no means limited to triangles, squares, pentagons, or hexagons. These shapes can also come together in various ways and produce new three-dimensional geometrical ones. The cube and the pyramid are the first examples that can be cited. In addition to these, however, there are also such three-dimensional shapes as the tetrahedron, octahedron, dodecahedron, icosahedron, and hexahedron that we may never encounter in our daily lives, and whose names we may never even have heard of. The dodecahedron consists of 12 pentagonal faces, and the icosahedron of 20 triangular ones. Scientists have discovered that these shapes can all mathematically turn into one another, and that this transformation takes place with ratios linked to the golden ratio. Three-dimensional forms that contain the golden ratio are very widespread in microorganisms. Many viruses have an icosahedron shape. The best known of these is the adenovirus. The protein sheath of the adenovirus consists of 252 protein subunits, all regularly set out. The 12 subunits in the corners of the icosahedron are in the shape of pentagonal prisms. Rod-like structures protrude from these corners. The first people to discover that viruses came in shapes containing the golden ratio were Aaron Klug and Donald Casper from Birkbeck College in London in the 1950s. The first virus they established this in was the polio virus. The Rhino 14 virus has the same shape as the polio virus. Why is it that viruses have shapes based on the golden ratio? Shapes that are hard for us even to visualize. Aaron Klug, who discovered these shapes, explains. My colleague Donald Casper and I showed that the design of these viruses could be explained in terms of a generalization of icosahedral symmetry that allows identical units to be related to each other in a quasi-equivalent way, with a small measure of internal flexibility. We enumerated all the possible designs, which have similarities to the geodesic domes designed by the architect R. Buckminster Fuller. However, whereas Fuller's domes have to be assembled following a fairly elaborate code, the design of the virus shell allows it to build itself. Klug's description once again reveals a manifest truth. There is a sensitive planning and a perfect structure, even in viruses, regarded by scientists as one of the simplest and smallest living things. This structure is a great deal more successful than and superior to those of Buckminster Fuller, one of the world's most eminent architects. The dodecahedron and icosahedron also appear in the silica skeletons of radiolarians, single-celled marine organisms. Structures based on these two geometric shapes, like the regular dodecahedron with feet-like structures protruding from each corner, and the various formations on their surfaces, make up the varying beautiful bodies of the radiolarians. The golden ratio also manifests itself in crystal structures. Most of these are in structures too minute to be seen with the naked eye. Yet you can see the golden ratio in snowflakes. The various long and short variations and protrusions that comprise the snowflake all yield the golden ratio. You encounter Fibonacci series and the golden ratio in fields that fall under the sphere of physics. When a light is held over two contiguous layers of glass, one part of that light passes through, one part is absorbed, and the rest is reflected. What happens is a multiple reflection. The number of paths taken by the ray inside the glass, before it emerges again, depends on the number of reflections it is subjected to. In conclusion, when we determine the number of rays that re-emerge, we find that they are compatible with the Fibonacci numbers. The fact that a great many unconnected animate or inanimate structures in nature are shaped according to a specific mathematical formula is one of the clearest proofs that these have been specially created. The golden ratio is an aesthetic rule well known and applied by artists. Works of art based on that ratio represent aesthetic perfection. Plants, galaxies, microorganisms, crystals, and living things created according to this rule, imitated by artists, are all examples of God's superior artistry. God reveals in the Quran that He has created all things with a measure. Some of these verses read, God has appointed a measure for all things. Everything has its measure with Him.